So you obviously had the entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were doing this as an entrepreneur and you had to cut enough hair to be able to pay your bills and all, what made you even think of wholesaling?
This is a great question. So, right before I got out of college, I'm driving home from work one day and I hear on the radio that you can buy houses without any money, that you can do real estate without any money of your own. And I'm like, this got to be a joke. Like, what do you mean you can buy real estate with no money? What do you mean you can flip houses with no money? This doesn't make any sense. But I was like, I got to check it out. So I went to this 2 hour workshop that they had. Do you know Cole Hatter?
No.
Cole Hatter,
Sorry.
he's one of the Avenger guys. But anyway,
Oh,
he
sorry.
he was running this workshop. Actually, the 2 hour workshop kind of gets your foot in the door. They talk about real estate a little bit, and then they push you to a 3 day workshop. Cole Hatter was the one that was teaching the 3 day workshop. You pay like a
Wow.
hundred bucks, and it's a 3 day workshop. But the 3 day workshop taught how to wholesale, how to fix and flip, and how to buy and hold. And
All in 3 days. What? Why were they so slow? Couldn't they do it in one? No, I'm kidding.
what right? Well, it was very extensive. So I got the whole idea of what real estate was all about. And at the end of that 3 day workshop, they pitch you on like a $50,000 mentorship, which at the time I obviously was not close to having. Um, so I didn't join that, but it was a seed that was planted for later on because it got to the point where I remember there was a time where I just was getting sick of cutting hair because it's a lot. You're on your feet all day. You're having conversations after conversations after conversations, and I'm not gonna say it's the ability to grow rapidly is kind of tough. Like if you want to grow a bunch of barbershops, right? And here's another thing that happened. Actually, I'm not even gonna go there, but um, because I'll talk for hours. We'll be here until 7 o'clock at night chatting if you let me. So stop me.
Tonight
And
or tomorrow? No, I'm just kidding.
tomorrow.
One of the things that strikes me about people who cut hair is that they're always getting their hands cold, in cold water, warm water, dryers. The hand temperature changes seem
Mm.
severe to me, because when they touch my hair, I'm like, oh, your hands are cold, or oh, your hands are hot. I'm like, wow, your hands are always changing the temperature.
Mm.
To me, it seemed like that would be one of the most bothersome things about doing people's hair personally.
Yeah, it could just get tedious
Yep.
and repetitive. You know.
So what happened when you found that that was the case? Hello, Ralph. Nice to see you.
So once I realized, I'm like, this barber thing isn't for me full time. Um, that's when I remembered my father. My father keeps like connecting the dots to these people, right? Because when you're a contractor, you work for a lot of people that are making decent money. So I remember there was a guy because I used to help my father labor sometimes,
Hmm.
and there's a guy named Bill. Bill was a fix and flipper, still is a fix and flipper, who I used to go to his projects and mix the mud and do all that type of stuff. But I used to talk to him like here and there. I'm like, hey, what do you do? He's like, oh, this is my house. I own it. I flip it. And he's just kind of telling us where to go and what to do. And I'm like, I want to be that guy. So I remembered that, and I texted my pops and I was like, hey, can you send me Bill's number? Ended up contacting Bill, and I was just like, hey, so here's the deal. I'm looking to get into real estate. I don't know what I can do for you. Um, um, I can labor. I'm pretty strong. I can do things for you if you want. He's like, hey, well, I just bought a new house. Why don't you come help me on some demo? So I went to his house. I think it was like the next day and started demoing. Didn't know what the heck I was doing. Started demoing. And then he's just like, he walks in maybe halfway through me doing it. He's like, you know what? I got to go head to another property. You want to go head to that and maybe get some lunch? So I was like, all right, cool. And it got to the point where me and Bill built a really good relationship. And he knew that I was hungry. And he knew that I was hunting to get my first deals in the motion. So he was there to help me with a lot of things. He was there to come walk some of my seller appointments. He was there to for me to come walk his projects and ask him what this costs and what that costs. And got to the point where my first deal ended up selling to him. But it was over the course of maybe 6 months or so. I would just hang out with him. I would help him out on as many projects as I could. And yeah, he taught me the ropes in the beginning.
Wow. Were you on any kind of salary? What were you doing for money? Was he paying you?
Nope, 100% for free.
Okay. That's awesome. How were you supporting yourself?
Well, remember, I had an office, so that I still had a chair at, so I could
I
cut
gotcha.
wherever.
So you still had the hair cutting business.
And now that I remember, there was also a point in time where me and one of my buddies bought a box truck, and we started a junk removal business. I'm like an
Oh,
all-American
okay.
hustler. I've done all the hustles that you could think. So we
That's
bought this
great.
box truck, and we started cleaning people's trash. We started going around the city, posting things, and essentially operating a junk removal company, which I used to work like that company used to do some demo for Bill later on down the line.
Nice.
So I was doing just a bunch of different things. However I could make money, I was doing it.
Got you. And speaking of junk removal, got junk, right?
Right. We were like
Yeah.
1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yeah. 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Started in Vancouver. And the
Interesting.
reason they got to be as big as they did, one of the reasons is because they were demoing a house and they found like wall after wall after wall filled with cash.
Really?
And they decided they weren't going to keep it. They tracked down the heirs of the rightful owner and gave it to them. Well, anybody who was worried about having anyone in their house anymore was like, yes, you come into my house and do this.
Right.
So yeah, pretty amazing, to say the least. But yeah, I think that's really cool that hustling and doing things and, taking care of yourself. And it's also interesting that you were doing all this for free with Bill. That's kind of apprenticing, right?
Yeah.
And you were learning from someone who had already done it well. So their time's valuable.
100%. Learning like a sponge.
Yes, of course. Of course. If you're an apprentice, you recognize that you're lucky to be learning from that person. And you want to, get out of the apprenticeship and onto your own as soon as you can. So you're looking to shorten your learning curve. No doubt about it. How did you bring him a deal?
So over the course of the next, I would say 6 months or so, I started marketing. I started looking at on-market properties. I started sending mailers. I started cold calling. I started door knocking, literally doing anything that I saw on Jerry Norton's YouTube. I went out and did. So literally, this is what my day started to look like. My day started to look like me waking up in the morning, watching Jerry Norton, and then whatever he was teaching that day on YouTube, I will go out and do. So like the double dip strategy on the MLS,
yeah,
he was teaching that, I will go out and do. He was teaching door knocking, I will go out and do it. He was teaching whatever, I will go out and do it. And I just did that every single day. The problem is I wasn't consistent in any of the things, and we can get to that later on down the line because I was doing so many different things and I wasn't really mastering any of them.
Right.
But in doing that, here's what happened. I started gaining traction and I started to create some sort of opportunities. And every single time those opportunities would come, I would contact Bill. And the reason why Bill would answer, well, we're good homies, but he really knew that every single time that I called, there was a potential deal for him to buy. Right? Because every single time I called, I made sure, or every single time I texted him and was having a conversation with him, I made sure that I led with some sort of value that came to him.
Right.
Whether that was in the form of a deal or whatever. It was like, hey, Bill, I have this deal. What do you think about it?
Was he buying them all from you?
No. So he just bought the first deal from me. And that was...
What did you make on that first deal?
20 grand.
Wow. Score. Nice.
Yeah, it was good.
I'll bet you felt like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere.
Yes, because I almost quit. It got to the point where I finally gained some traction in generating leads with hiring a virtual assistant. This is before I was ever even in sub two. This is back in like 2020 or 2020, I think. I finally get a virtual assistant and she starts generating me leads, but I wasn't getting anywhere. Like it just simply, I was about to get a contract. Something would happen. I even got one contract, couldn't sell it. And I was just frustrated to the point where I was like, hey, I spent all my money pretty much at this point. I'm about to leave real estate and never do it again. And then one day I see an ad from Pace, and it was like, hey, how to get into real estate with no money out of your pocket. And I'm like, let me check this guy out. So I started looking at a couple of his videos. I'm like, this guy knows his stuff. So this is my last shot in the dark. It's either I do this and it works, or I do this and it don't, and I'm never doing real estate again. So I hop on a call with one of the sales reps over there at Sub 2, get into the mentorship. And that same day, I end up on a Q&A with Pace. Like I'm literally talking to the guy that I just saw on YouTube. I'm like, yo, this is crazy.
Yeah, it blows your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, it blew my mind. So I had a conversation with him and I'm like, hey, Pace, dude, I don't know what the heck it is that I'm doing, but I'm just not getting any deals. Like I'm doing all the things that they're saying on YouTube. I'm generating leads. I'm calling sellers. I'm talking to people. I'm submitting offers. I'm doing all these things and I'm just not getting anywhere. And he starts pulling back the curtains in my business. And finally he's like, Mike, I think you have a conversion problem. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I'm like, what the heck does that mean? He's like, you need to go learn sales. I'm like, the heck do you mean I got to go learn sales? I thought that just as a hustler, you buy some things and then sell them. And that's it. That's what I thought business was about. I didn't know that you had to understand how to communicate the sales part of things and sell people your product. So once he told me that, I'm like, oh gosh, I got to go figure this thing out. So I go get in the daily dial every day. I go listen to all the Pace's sales training. I go to listen to his seller calls. I start doing other sales training. I literally, my life gets consumed with learning sales. And in the first 3 weeks, I end up getting my first deal that I sold to Bill.
Nice. Nice. Now you were attending the daily dials. You weren't leading them at that point.
Yeah. At that point, I was just doing the role plays. Like I was the seller or the buyer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? I mean, it makes you really outside of your comfort zone for sure. Especially if you get cut down a lot. So, where'd you go after you got that first one to Bill? Did you continue with Bill, or did you just jump into sub 2? Because that's a lot of money to pay, and I'm sure that it made a difference. What'd you do?
Oh no, I was already in sub 2 at that point. What happened from there is I just started gaining traction with leads, and I started really understanding how to talk to sellers, and I started doing about a deal a month after that. But what I realized is Bill's great and he's a great buyer. The problem is I was leaving so many opportunities on the table because there's only certain deals that Bill will buy. When there's
there's only one Bill, right?
Exactly. And there's only a certain buy box that he has. But there's other cash buyers that are buying properties for other different reasons in different ways, having different thoughts on ARVs and construction costs and all that. And I realized that pretty quick. And here's how I realized it. There's one day I go on an appointment. Bill was with me. And this lady named Lorna, I go there. The asking price on the property was like $195. That's what she wanted. And I go there with Bill. We have a great appointment. She loves us. She wants to do a deal with us and all that. And I go to give her the offer, and Bill's like, there's no way you can offer anything more than $175,000. There's just no way. Like maybe I'd be able to give you like a $5,000 assignment, if that. I just don't see anybody purchasing it at that number. So that's what I did. I gave her an offer of 175 and it didn't get accepted. And then about 3 months later, I see the property for sale on Facebook in one of these wholesaling groups. And I'm like, ain't no way that they're selling that property. Like these are just what these knucklehead wholesalers that Pace be talking about. This is one of them. They just don't know what the heck they're doing. But I was curious. So I called and I'm like, hey, I see this deal that you have on Taunton. Funny enough, I actually had an appointment with her. I gave an offer and I didn't get the deal. I was just curious to see how you guys ended up making out. And she's like, well, we actually sold it at $240,000. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how? And she's like, Mike, we've been doing this for a good 3 years now. We have a massive buyers list. We got thousands of buyers on our buyers list. And we do about 5 to
And
10 deals
you
per month.
have Bill.
Right. And I got one person. So I just asked her, I'm like, hey, is there any way that we can do deals together? Like, can we squat up on these things when I get stuff under contract? She's like, yeah. So for the rest of the year, every single time I would go on a seller appointment and get a contract, I would just tell them, hey, from here on out, I'm out of the deal. I got to go find more deals. You'll be talking to Beth and her team, and they'll figure the rest out. So I literally just, all my days were consisted of talking to sellers, going on appointments, locking up deals, and sending them to Beth and her team. And that's how we grew in the beginning.
That's cool.